Welcome. This is the first of 3 sessions examining a spiritual journey, one approach to spiritual growth, based on an eminent classic of the spiritual life from the 13th century, The Soul's Journey into God. My name is Len Bowman, and I'll be your guide in this brief exploration. I'm a theologian, and I've studied the spiritual classic enough that I became for some years a regular commuter between here and the 13th century. This series of 3 sessions will take us journeying through the visible world and our bodily being, the mental world and our moral being, and above and beyond those, probing being itself and goodness itself. Obviously, we'll be traveling quite fast on this journey. An interesting feature of this spiritual journey is that there's no spiritual practice per se recommended in it. It calls upon us only to be attentive to our ordinary experience in its depth and dynamism. This session's agenda is rather full. A brief introduction to the source of the journey, then a brief journey through the visible world, a guided meditation modeled after the first step in the soul's journey, and we'll pause for a brief rest. Then a brief journey in our bodily being, a guided meditation modeled after the second step in the soul's journey. And then I'll reveal a hidden agenda behind this series, an attempt to repair a rift in Western consciousness from which we still suffer acutely. Our 13th century guide is a man named Bonaventure. We don't know what he looked like, so artists were free to imagine. Bonaventure was born probably in 1221 and died in 1274. Bonaventure was a Franciscan, which means he was a follower of Francis of Assisi, whom people are used to hearing of as St. Francis. One of the most powerful stories of the life of Francis was a mystical experience near the end of his life, portrayed in this painting by Giotto. Bonaventure is also called a saint. Just over 30 years after Francis died, Bonaventure found himself head of the Franciscan order. It was a time of terrible tension within that order, and Bonaventure was honored to occupy the hot seat as Minister General of the order. Seeking guidance, he went to the very place of Francis' mystical experience and immersed himself in meditation and prayer. What bloomed from Bonaventure's experience there is the soul's journey into God. It is that guide which we will attempt to follow. Now it can be found among Bonaventure's voluminous works. The Latin title is Itinerarium Mentis in Deum, which is a bit hard to translate. Itinerarium translates journey, or could translate itinerary or plan of a journey. Mentis is typically translated soul, but literally it means mind. For Bonaventure, mind-heart. In Deum really means into God, not up to. That's quite a claim. And Bonaventure doesn't settle for a conventional received God. He probes. We will too. Translations are available, but the itinerarium is dense and difficult. I think the best translation was published in 1978, done by Ewart Cousins. I've also done an interpretation of the itinerarium, softened the exclusively 13th century Christian elements, used more current philosophy, phenomenology and existentialism, linked it with contemporary experiences, and tried to make it more accessible. But its expression remains explicitly Christian and biblical. This series takes a step further. It's a distillation of my interpretation. My basic premise is that Bonaventure, though his language is that of the Bible and Christian tradition, was actually describing an experience accessible to anyone willing to open mind and heart to this journey. Therefore, this series attempts to travel Bonaventure's journey using the language of ordinary and perhaps universal human experience. Shall we try it? Let's do a guided meditation on the first step of the soul's journey, Earth and journey through the visible world. So, to focus our effort, we'll need something representing the visible world. Would a spring scene from my garden be okay? Contemplate it. Most often we take things for granted, even landscaping. First of all, it's there. Data. Given. Ponder what that means. It is present. It presents itself to us. It is present in time, emerging to greet us, balanced in our awareness. Emerging from where? It is present here, and here embraces all around it, beyond walls to imaginable horizons and beyond. It is the focus of that entire circle, the orbis terrarum, the universe, which means a turning oneness. It approaches us, emerging, as if it's projected, thrown forth from the edges of that circle, that is, from that beyond. As time passes, it is also withdrawing, drawn into that beyond. In our awareness, it stands in a dynamic balance between its approach being sent forth and its withdrawal, the return whence it came, beyond. We perceive it then in the light of its coming forth and of its return. That light also enables us to conceive of world, of universe, now focused for us in this simple thing. What feelings arise as you contemplate it? Peace, even something like joy. In contemplating the simple, beautiful thing, you touch the unity of the universe. You sense the presence beyond that gives and that draws. Note that this can be understood as the source of art, of a still life that is a trap for contemplation of ordinary things. And that sense of the luminous passing of time music, dance. Rest a few moments in this balance. Take a few moments to rest. You may choose to pause the program. Note that you can take this path of meditation as a spiritual journey on its own. Now, let's do a brief guided meditation on the second step of the soul's journey, our bodily being. A word on our method. Bonaventure, true to his time, focused on either objects or concepts. He takes for granted what is actually closer, subjective awareness through our senses and the lived encounter between subject and object. Our philosophic method grounds ourselves in that closer awareness, phenomenology, descriptive analysis of our inner experience, validated intersubjectively. That is, do you see what I see? Now, let's reflect on what Bonaventure took for granted. Please ensure that you're sitting comfortably but up straight so that you can breathe freely, feet flat on the floor, hands at ease. You may want to close your eyes. Breathe deeply, steadily. Gather the wandering thoughts of your mind to focus on your breathing. Feel the air passing through your nostrils. In, out. In, out. Sense the steady rhythm of your heart. Let the small sounds around you blend together like a gently flowing stream passing by, flowing gently, steadily. Let yourself feel the gentle pressure of your body against the seat that supports you. Feel the cool touch of the surrounding air upon your face and hands. You are here. Your bodily being locates you in time and place. Here, within a universe that stretches beyond, including the invisible, now rides a current of time emerging from nothingness and reaching beyond. You are here and now, at home, embraced. Sense the vital connection of your own bodily being with the world. There is no chasm separating your embodied mind from the physical world. Bodily awareness testifies to the integrity of your being, the unity of your being with the world. What do you feel? perhaps a kind of joy at this recognition of harmony, of world outside us, but that includes us, embraces us. The harmony, the unity happens as we meet the world, and joy rises from that event. We are in partnership, ourselves and our world. The unspoken mystery of world, focused in your awareness, calls forth your response of wonder, of gratitude. In your bodily awareness is a promise, a call, drawing you upward, drawing us upward together, if we dare to share. You may open your eyes. Take a few moments to rest. You may choose to pause the program. Note that you can take this path of meditation as a spiritual journey on its own. Remember that for this spiritual journey, there is no spiritual practice recommended. It calls upon us only to be attentive to our ordinary experience in its depth and dynamism. Now, about that hidden agenda. Bonaventure was the last great spokesperson for an integral worldview in which body and mind, faith and reason were all considered one embodied mind-heart. Late in the 13th century, a split occurred in Western consciousness, a split that divided reason from faith, rationality from wisdom, partial views from the whole. We're still trying to recover. You see, into the 13th century, basic to knowledge and experience was illumination. They understood that the mind-heart was grounded in, embraced by the divine, so that whatever we know or experience is known in and by that divine presence, like the physical light by which we see everything that we see, but which we tend to take for granted. In that understanding, the medievals were spiritual kin to the Hindu who knew the Atman within and the revelatory glow of experienced things called Maya, or to the Taoist who sense everything, especially unspoiled nature, emerging from and revealing the way of heaven. Faith and reason were partners in this integral worldview, so much so that Bonaventure spoke of the Bible as the second book of God's revelation. The first revelation is the created world, within and outside the mind. The Bible serves only as a dictionary to help understand the deeper revelation of the first book. Bonaventure couldn't conceive of setting the Bible over against human reason, though he did oppose a rationalism that ignored higher wisdom. But things changed. Thomas Aquinas, Bonaventure's colleague at the University of Paris, taught that the mind's only light was its own natural light. Knowledge of God was supernatural, and though abstract reasoning could know a bit about God only through the supernatural teaching of the Church, can a person really come to know God? That natural-supernatural split replaced the integral worldview of Bonaventure with what I like to call a layer cake universe, human knowledge and experience below the merely natural the divine realm above, supernatural. By the end of the 14th century, confidence in human reason declined, leaving a barrier between the human and the divine, to be bridged only by church authority, an unquestioning faith in that authority. And this happened by mistake, by oversight, a tragedy of intellectual history. With the Reformation, there may have been a chance to remedy that mistake, but Martin Luther was himself heir to the skepticism of the late 14th century, and so substituted the bare, bright word of Scripture, the Bible, for the rejected church authority, a way opened by faith alone. By the Enlightenment, the focus had shifted to trusting reason, that is, the natural, and the only acceptable role for God in the new thought was as explanation, a postulated first principle for existence which, once things existed, was superfluous. Into the 20th century, of course, some clung to the supernatural, in the extreme, denying any validity to the natural, fundamentalism. Meanwhile, those dedicated to reason denied any validity to the claims of the supernatural, indeed of anything beyond the strictly empirical, scientism. This mutual rejection was the latest manifestation of the rift that began in the 13th century. Beginning in the mid-20th century and into the present, new approaches to philosophy reached beyond rationalism to a broader investigation of human experience and thought, phenomenology, and existentialism. Meanwhile, the Western world was enriched by more communication with other cultures and religions. As a result, we may be recovering, bit by bit, an integral sense of the world. Our spiritual journey, that is this very effort that we now share, may be part of that recovery. Yes, that is the hidden agenda for our journey. Next, we'll take the third and fourth steps along a spiritual journey, our mental world and our moral being.